everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This is our 1415th episode. We will discuss on technocracy and talent economy. Beside these shows and business incubation activities, uh, World Talent Economic Forum last few months we organized around uh, 10 different conference with the student communities, thinkers, and academician and industry people. And everywhere we present this wisdom app, especially we share about the concept of Kokobo. It's invented by Dr. Julian Grosser. He is a famous scientist from USA. We have our Tando president, Professor Fred Philip. We also have another Tando fellow, Mr. David Smith. We have our World Talent Economic Forum fellow, Mr. Rob Enderle and Madam Ali Rice. Now I request our honorable chief guest, Mr. Julians, to present his Kokoro and his new inventions. Hopefully, these sessions will be very valuable for the universities, for thinkers, for academicians, also for the industries. Thank you, everyone, and let's start.
Well, Sharif, thank you very much. I've enjoyed working together with you over these many months, and I know a number of our distinguished panelists are friends, and I very much welcome our audience. And our focus today will be on a series of challenges that I asked Sharif to present to me, and I'll try to show how Kokoro, in this case, personal wisdom, can very practically address these challenges and put in the hands of our audience a valuable tool to help them navigate in these very turbulent and exciting times. So Kokoro, as you can see, is written with the Japanese Chinese character, which means it brings together heart and mind in one character. And this is actually significant because what we're talking about is a set of skills that bring together and apply this core life competency of Kokoro, heart, mind. So a little bit of introduction to what we're calling the Kokoro Wisdom Resilience Platform. And it is indeed a platform because we have a series of applications of which Kokoro Personal Wisdom, which is what we're discussing today, is one of these. This is an evolving platform, AI-based. And our key focal point is this concept of what I call integral resilience. Now, most people think that resilience means capacity to bounce back agilely. But why would you want to bounce back if what you're returning to is a source of problem? So I've come up with, and there is actually one other, I've been able to find one other person in the academic world that is teaching courses on integral resilience, which means you look at the whole person. You can be resilient physically and emotionally, but not energetically, or your finances will not be resilient, or spiritually you may be lost. So we're interested in the whole person and how to integrate this capacity, not to bounce back, but to turn adversity to advantage. So I just repeat it. This is really the core idea. What you'll be hearing today is a set of skills to turn adversity, difficulties, calamities, crises, of which we have a large supply, into personal advantage for your organization, advantage for your community. Now we've come upon what we believe, the Rosetta Stone of human behavior. And that is, lo and behold, integral resilience. And we'd like to suggest that even though this sounds at an abstract, large scale level, that wisdom and resilience, in addition to being virtues, which most people think are qualitative, are in core life competencies and skills that actually can be measured. And our goal here is to cultivate and master these skills at all levels, personal, organizational, community. And we will give rules and metrics on how to do it. And I just like to flag that we're particularly interested in the opportunity now for the world of recognizing and honoring the wisdom of women that has been with us throughout history and many cultures all over the world, but hasn't been adequately recognized and certainly has not been encoded in such a way that it could be immediately useful and applied in combination and in harmony with the wisdom of men. And we believe that this absence of that in a formal way lies at the root of many world problems and also offers a clue to its solution, their solution. So here is the way Sharif framed the challenges. Navigating uncertainty in career and life direction, coping with personal and collective trauma. I think these are challenges particularly faced by young people in professions. Rebuilding trust and social cohesion in a polarized world, building inner strength amid systemic challenges, and aligning values with purpose-driven action. So that's what we're focusing on here. And I'm going to try to show you how Kokoro, Wisdom, Resilience AI can be helpful. Now, there's a tendency in the world now to sort of turn everything over to a new god of AI. It's completely not what we're suggesting. We're just suggesting that this platform can be of some use, but ultimately you, the user, are in charge. You will be driving it, and this is just a helpful assistant. Now, there's something interesting, which is of general interest as well, about the way Sharif framed these challenges. Because you will note that on one hand, these challenges look like, let's call them the problem, uncertainty, trauma, trust, building inner strength, aligning values. They're also, curiously, they hold the secret of the road forward. And that's how we've organized this app. So the way the app is set up is you are encouraged to pose any question that involves wisdom in relationship to the above question. For example, you might say in the app, help me deal more effectively with uncertainty. And then there will be a column that presents various resilience challenges to coping effectively with uncertainty. For example, fear or burnout. And then there are certain resources and skills that you can develop and practices to deal with uncertainty. For example, one of the core great practices in Zen Buddhism, which I've trained with for 40 years, a great Japanese Zen master, there's a saying, not knowing is most intimate. In other words, we live in a world where there are enormous pressures to know. And yet, what if the answer to uncertainty lies on being okay with it? In other words, tolerating it. And you will find that as you get more and more at ease with uncertainty, the answers will just appear. In other words, you become more and more intimate with who you are. Now, what if you could, in a matter of seconds, tap the collective wisdom of all traditions, of all great people throughout history and literature, even the wisdom of nature with one or two clicks? Well, that's what the mentor part of this is. So if you wanted, in terms of uncertainty, let's say Nelson Mandela, well, you just go down a column and you'll see Nelson Mandela could be your personal coach, and you click and you pose your question, and in a matter of 5 seconds, the system encodes and presents not only some quotations of Nelson Mandela, who certainly understood uncertainty, but also how it connects specifically to resilience and wisdom. And so you begin to get a sense that you're onto something. And so how do you start to develop this skill, and what actions can you take? So there are various wisdom practices, resilience practices. And then if you say it would really be helpful to me if I could have a week training with very specific practical things to do. And so you push a button and there you go. You're off in 5 seconds, you have a training program. So that's an overview and roadmap on how the system would deal with uncertainty. Now we have various wisdom practices. And in terms of the first challenge, uh, which we posed, one, and also some of the others, which relate to the professional uncertainty that many of the people in the audience feel. I mean, and this is, by the way, this is not some, what can I say, fan, fancy or some trivial concern, because the environment, at least in the United States, is becoming more and more hostile to let's call it, worse path. In other words, there's a great now for the god of efficiency. Everything in corporate America, everything I can't say, maybe everything, but a great majority of companies are pushing aside the the, the, the values of ESG, environment, social governance, and really saying that all that is important is efficiency, bottom line. And so thousands, maybe millions of young people who have worked in companies are being tossed out back onto the street. It's up to them to upskill. Um, and and so the division between what really matters to you in your life and how you earn a living, this is a dark chasm that's becoming increasingly large. In other words, what really matters, your soul's path, you have to cleave off from what really, how you earn a living. It needn't be so. We have developed a way where not only you can begin to come in touch with, through your work, through the mastery of tasks, you can bring it closer to what's really meaningful in your life, and at the same time, increase the bottom line of your employer or the value of the organization you're working. So there is a gap. Now, part of this gap is that wisdom and resilience have been treated as essentially qualitative virtues, but non-economic in nature. And we have developed a way to recognize qualitative, but also transform it in terms of quantitative value. So there's a little bit of a foretaste of what I'll be showing you today. But anyway, the survey, Soul's Work Survey, and as you follow it, you will be able to identify and reverse engineer your future in a clear statement that you can then come back and refer to as you navigate and negotiate employment for yourself. It brings it closer to you, your deep values. And we begin with the integral resilience baseline, which looks at physical resilience, emotional resilience, energetic resilience, financial resilience, perceptive resilience, relationship resilience, and finally, spiritual resilience, all in a holistic way. And you can see you have this cursor and you move it around, move it up and down. You give yourself a value. Now, I want to just make a note on, we'll come back to metrics. The second challenge, and third challenges that Sharif posed involve trauma and trust. Trauma, I've dealt with trauma. Now, I want to say is I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and Kokoro is not offering professional medical advice, psychiatric advice. What we're offering is a set of wisdom practices, as noted, that deal with a widespread affliction in the world. It is really quite striking how much trauma there is. And one of the things that we're beginning to discover is that you can have, and this is in an interesting reciprocal way, you can have trauma in one part of your life, which shows up in another. Uh, I have a I have a terrible lower back problem now that's impeding me from work. And the therapist that I'm seeing, we just have pointed out that the emotional turmoil of a massive move of my house may be showing up in my back. Well, it's the same idea that one piece of trauma shows up in another part of your life. And so you have to approach these kinds of challenges holistically, as I've suggested. The second third question that Sharif posed involved trust. Now, there's a lot that we've given a lot of thought to trust. The most important thing is that many companies do recognize that having the trust of their employees is critical. I will tell you that disengagement with work is a massive global phenomenon. The Gallup organization estimates that the cost to civil society of employees disengaged, disenchanted with work is $8.9 trillion a year. So companies are struggling with how to engage the employees, but they don't have a very effective system. They're trying to do it with surveys, but they don't have a behavioral model about how human beings behave and how to really create value for employees so that they really want to hang around and contribute. And so trust begins with some very basic practices of discovering who you are and what is truly valuable, and for the employer side, to invest in your people, to invest in their capacity to make wise decisions that they can bring out to their families and their communities. And when employees can sense that not just in word, but in name, that the employers actually care about them, they will want to master the skills that they are given and new skills that they self-upskill that will be meaningful to them and their employer. And so you have a virtuous circle that can be created through this process. Now we have various tools of restoring trust. And also, one of the important parts of this is negotiation. And in negotiation, the first thing you want to do, and by the way, I define negotiation as not simply getting to an agreement, but moving any cause forward with integrity. And in doing so, it's really critical as part of this behavioral model, understand yourself and understand the other. In the war, Sun Tzu, the great Chinese military general, philosopher, said, if you know yourself and you know the other, you cannot be defeated in 100 battles. But he never explained how to do it. And so PIPS, this player integrity profile, allows you to go behind the mask. Everybody has a personality with a mask that hides their inner feelings and so forth. We can rather quickly hone in like a laser as to what are the core of the things that concern people, what they hope for, and more deeply their character. Because as the great philosopher Heraclitus said, character is destiny. So these are an example of practical skills. Now you can build your PIPS player integrity profile steadily and immeasurably by developing various qualities called building these inner strengths, all right? Steadiness is one example. Flow is another. The minute the heart energy, there's an energy field around the heart. Most people don't realize that the heart is a communicating organ, continuously communicating with both the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And there's various energy fields. There's an electromagnetic field. There's a field which the Chinese is called the Qi field, And then there's an unconditional love field, which is the most powerful. You can develop these inner sources of energy, almost by analogy, like an inner martial art. And I've developed a practice which is on my website, Just Click, called which is called Just Click, by which you can demonstrate uh, a an extraordinary thing, because when you quiet your mind by quieting your heart, and then you open your energy field heart, whatever happens next, you connect with to it, it reciprocates. This is the miracle, and you can validate this for yourself. Now, when you discover the sense of interdependence, because underlying the 5 questions that Sharif posed to us today is the belief that we're all separate. We're the belief we are fragile, that we are lost, that we are without power. But when you begin to discover that you are profoundly connected, this is just separation is just a hypothesis, and it is most likely fundamentally invalid at a deep level. When you discover your deep interconnectedness with not only your family, with your friends, with your community, but with the living environment, nature itself, which is an enormous sense of power, your resilient system, your approach to negotiation and navigation becomes much stronger. And you can practice these things on a daily basis, and they're terrific fun. So I wanted to, in concluding, give you a little sense of metrics. So we have various uh, metrics in the Kokoro system. One is we always begin with what we call a baseline. And this is an example that there are various questions in the baseline. You move the cursor, and then it displays a graph. One of the most important metrics we have is what is called field notes, because every skill in this system that builds wisdom and resilience is amenable to tracking in real. When I began in martial arts when I was young in college and judo, and the first thing I learned in judo was how to break fall. Because once you are not afraid of being thrown, you become very dangerous, because then you can take risks. So field note is really the core, the grounding of in judo. There's a term called rondori, which is free practice. Kokoro turns all of life into a kind of rondori. And there are 3 possibilities in any situation as you're working on, say, a core quality of wisdom, say, steadiness or flow. You say, this week, because this is a mastery program, self-mastery, this week I want to increase my capacity to flow. So you set up that as the series, and something happens in your life that challenges you. And so you then have 3 options. You can win, which means you apply flow effectively, and you give yourself a score. You saw how we have the cursor. Or you get thrown. That's called falling off. And then finally, you recover. That's the great skill. So as you begin to move the cursor, you're able to measure how you do. Now you could say, well, this is all subjective, but there's one principle called the principle of increasing fidelity. If the more resilient, the more wisdom you have, the more you see the world accurately as it is, including yourself. And therefore, the data becomes increasingly salient. There's some principles in field notes that we believe are really important. We are less interested in winning. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to hone your skill to self-evaluate and understand. So actually, winning, pulling off, and recovering are of equal dignity. The key is being able to understand and extract the secrets of when you are able to flow, or what interfered with you in flowing, or how you turned an adverse situation into advantage. This is the most fundamental way you can deal with the questions that Sharif posed, because this is a navigation roadmap at the most micro level to be able to build wisdom and resilience as core life competencies. There's been a whirlwind journey to give you just the first taste of Kokoro heart mind. But I'd like to conclude with these four observations. First, this is a self mastery journey that links all the world's traditions: Indian traditions, Islamic traditions, the Old and New Testament, the Zen tradition. In fact, you can put any person that's not in our database and include them, and we can instantly tap their wisdom. And also nature's wisdom. You can learn a lot from the rainforest. You can learn a lot in terms of relaxation from how a leopard relaxes and so forth. To apply these sources of wisdom immediately to their challenges. Second, by selecting any move or principle, and this is really quite, for me, when I discovered this, quite miraculous, you simultaneously discover the connection with many other moves. And thereby your wisdom and resilience compound and multiply. We call that principle of compounding multiplier. And you can accomplish it by practicing everything with everything. I learned this from a Kung Fu master who trained the Chinese Red Guard. He said in Chinese Wushu, you practice everything with everything. So any one move, steadiness, flow, automatically builds your ability to see risk, builds your ability to learn, builds your capacity to go through the mask of the people you're negotiating with, and so forth. You can transform your life, your community, and your country by training in small groups. Margaret Mead, the great anthropologist, said nothing in this world was ever accomplished except through small groups, and also taking small steps to solve focused challenges. It sounds paradoxical that great things could begin with small roots, small steps, but I believe that really is the secret to continuous enhanced performance. Well, I hope this gives you a flavor of Kokoro. We have Kokoro for organizations, and there we shift our focus. Of course, personal wisdom of employees is a fundamental thing we believe, and that companies ought to invest in. But also we address critical challenges, like how to deal with AI. We also have Kokoro for resilient communities. There we're particularly interested in leaders, building community leaders. And then finally, we are really excited about bringing feminine wisdom to the world. Not that it doesn't exist, but to articulate it, to honor it. We produced, which will publish very soon, an international declaration to recognize and honor the wisdom of women, age of balance and harmony. We will induct them into a hall of feminine wisdom. And we're hoping, our goal is over this year and next to have 50 to 100,000 women under our premium model who will have endorsed and working and supporting and bringing this into the concept of Kokoro into the world meeting. Well, anyway, thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to panel discussion. This is how you can reach me. We will post this on our respective websites. And we will be offering Kokoro for free toward the end of July, because we're interested in having a very substantial number of users. And you can begin to read about it at justclick.earth. Look and hope you can register. We go to Ocean Conversations, and there you will see Kokoro Net, and then we'll make the app available sometime toward the end of July. Well, anyway, thank you very much. I look forward to the panelists' comments.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. We have our other speakers. Professor Fred, Mr. Rob, Madam Ali Rice, Mr. David Smith, and Mr. Sheridan Tucson. Also, uh, one of the professor from IUT, he joined, I think, just 5 minutes before he left. Uh, Professor Fred, what's your comments on Cocker? And
Well, I want to express my admiration for what Julian has done here. It's a great service even to bring some of these topics forward when they're often dealt with implicitly, if at all. And, he has not just brought quiet things up for explicit discussion, but actually given people tools to deal with it. And I'm recalling one of Rob's comments from last week. Rob, this really made an impression on me. You said the purpose of AI should be to make us better people. And I think the Kokoro system does work toward that end. One of the people on Julian's team in an email today or yesterday, using large language models can destroy our critical thinking. And in fact, there's been evidence that it does, especially in young people. So can Kokoro foster critical thinking rather than destroy it? And I think in many ways it can. And I hope as the Kokoro system continues to evolve that it will emphasize that. I also, Julian said something about resilience not being bouncing back. I really think we need to put that bouncing back notion to rest because I give you a very obvious example. There are people who have their homes on barrier islands, and rising sea levels and stronger currents have made those islands disappear. So there's no going back. You can't bounce back to where you were. We need to think about resilience in terms of bouncing forward to where you want to go. But of course, you need to know where you want to go. Otherwise, there's no bouncing forward. There's no resilience. I think people need to be already somewhat advanced in their view of the world in order to use this system. We have some terrible situations in the United States where young people with no parental guidance, with no basic education, can't do basic arithmetic, have no concept of geography, poor logical skills. They may not be ready for this. So there's definitely a prerequisite to using Kokoro. But as I shared an article with Julian some time ago, young people are turning to AI for one primary reason, and that's for life guidance and for wisdom. So before Kokoro, what kind of wisdom and life guidance were they getting from the internet? They're getting BuzzFeed articles that says you've been brushing your teeth all wrong, or this is valuable. We need to brush our teeth correctly, but this is not the kind of deeper stuff that people really yearn for, and Kokoro goes a long way toward providing that. Alrighty, well, the other place where people get stuck is the popularity of this word mindfulness. Julian's Zen training and mine focuses on empty mind, mushin. And so it seems to me there's a world of difference between mindfulness and mind emptiness, but we will, try to explain our philosophies in the clearest possible way. And and make sure, as Julian said, that, people from all traditions can benefit from this and that people can benefit from all traditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Shree. As we look at some of the tech processes, Julian's product helps us blur the line between where artificial intelligence, where knowledge, where the human mindset and process can come in and make an impact. And it really extends it because it has the ability to capture institutional knowledge, societal knowledge, which in today's time, unfortunately, we're losing many times as we see how society is beginning to use the technologies, how it's using AI. There are some recent studies that actually show that the human capability to do advanced reasoning and recall the wisdom of the past is diminishing. So this is a tool that I think can really go and help there. The place that Fred made a comment, I'd like to really put a focus point on it too, is that we need to look at how this type of process and how the governance around this type of process can help us build really future focused, future ready societies. And one of the ways to do that is by using things like Julian's product, but to begin to take a broad brush of group intelligence and capture the group intelligence and continue to refine the group intelligence as we look towards this future and this future talent economy that is going to be built and used. And as we've talked many times before, it is a global talent economy, where in the past, many of the talent economies were regionally based or locally based. So Dr. Shreve, I think there's great possibilities, great tools, great utility that can be used. And it's something that I believe is one of the tools that needs to be in our toolbox as we begin to look towards the future. So thank you, Dr. Shreve.
Thank you. We have our woman panelist. Julian has the idea of women leadership through Kokoro. So what do you want to discuss about this initiative?
Yeah, well, it really resonates with me, the whole kind of process. One of the things that I've done is I've mastered leading a creative process. So there's student-led learning that's kind of project-based. And as an artist as well and a creator, I think uncertainty is one of the areas that I love to be in. So that's where the magic space is. And anyone that's creative, they like the fact that they don't know what's going to happen. And if you're facilitating a project, you're steered by other people's ideas and student ideas. So I think it's fantastic. I've also been involved in a lot. During 2020, I was involved in a program I'm really connected to Roger James Hamilton. I won Social Entrepreneur of 2013 on the back of the creative learning projects that I'd run as well. But what happened is in 2020, I kind of co-created a self-development thing with his kind of lead lady who's naturally intuitive. And I think that natural intuition is particularly profound in women, but I think it's there in everybody. And that kind of, I've also been incredibly connected to nature for as long as I can remember. And I think so many people have got disconnected to nature. So I think that, there's so many things that kind of resonate with me that are really important. And I've faced lots of challenges as well. And I think the thing is that challenges build your resilience and ability to come back and do things differently. And I think the thing is that Jason and I together worked in partnership for years and years and years. And the thing is, as a husband and wife team, we secure projects that are equivalent to projects that we didn't secure initially, but we've made an impact. And I think one of the things that's really incredible with technology is that we do have a global reach. And one of the things that we did end up doing in the end is we diversified over the years, but filmmaking was one of the ways of actually sharing wisdom. but also sharing on a global basis. We used to do short kind of animation and short films, but I think that filmmaking is one of those things that has a universal appeal. So I think the thing is and also I'm part of the Royal Society of Arts as well. And if nobody knows who Sir Ken Robinson was, they should check his work out, because essentially the education system in England fundamentally didn't change very much from the Industrial Revolution. And I think the thing is that creativity is key to changing things and making things happen. And I think the thing is that making things up and kind of going with your intuition or tapping into the universal consciousness is really important. I do yoga as well. And I think, so many things that you said just resonate with everything that I've experienced as well. So, and I think the thing is you can make things happen when you open yourself up, that the right people come into your life to make things happen and create partnerships. So that kind of co-creation and partnership and reach is really important. And I've got two young adolescents. I've got a 20-year-old and an almost 18-year-old, and they're really creatively driven too. And I think the thing is that nothing's impossible. And the people that give up on the dreams to use their gifts and talents are the ones that don't achieve what they want to, and the ones that continue to keep driving forward get there in the end, even if it's kind of not direct and there's experience. It's those experiences on the way that kind of make it more colorful, and that diversification is really important. So I love all this, and if AI is kind of driving that ability to individualize and figure out kind of ways of resolving conflict and challenge, it sounds great. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Mr. Rock.
I think if we do this kind of thing again, we probably need to break up the presentation a bit with some commentary, because it was kind of tough sitting through 30 minutes with us all sitting here. Also, Julian, you need a better microphone. I had a real hard time hearing you. It just wasn't as clear as it should be, and I imagine a lot of the audience does. And then Sheridan, just a quick comment. It looks like you're auditioning for Tim the Toolman Taylor. All we see is your eyes and the top of your nose. You should angle your camera down a bit, so we can see your face. That'd be great. Okay, so my middle degree was in manpower management, and manpower management was attempting to do what this is attempting to do, based on the learnings of Hertzberg and Maslow, and with Maslow trying to reach self-actualization and understanding what the layers you needed to get there. Fairly rudimentary compared to what we now know, but if we look at kids today, we have a number of problems. One of them is their brain isn't fully formed, and so they don't understand consequences until they're in their 20s, and that makes it very difficult for them to provide information with regard to what their ideal goals should be in the future, because they're simply just not going to know, and we don't know who they're going to be when they're fully functional. As they reach their late 20s and early 30s, they're likely going to be a very different person than they were when they were in their teens. And I think that probably speaks to why so many marriages that are early fail later in life, because the people just change so dramatically in that period of time that they might have been copacetic at the beginning and when they got married, but not at the end. And that creates a fairly big career problem. Speaking from personal experience, when I was a kid growing up, my grandfather was the CEO of a petrochemical company, and his view was that work should be work. If you're having fun in work, you're doing something wrong. And so I started life thinking, well, I don't want to work. I mean, why should I spend my entire life doing something I don't enjoy? And so I really rebelled against the concept. And so when I was young, I was thinking, well, what I really wanted to do for a living is I wanted to go work for a big company like IBM, which I eventually did. And I'd spend all my days in meetings and not really have to do this drudgery, and we'd be just chatting and having a good time. And if to prove me absolutely wrong, when I worked for IBM, I did spend most of my time in meetings, and I absolutely hated it. And it was probably the most horrible period of my life. I started off at Rome Systems, and I joined them because they had a great place to work department. And with my manpower management degree, I was looking to actually get into that department and hopefully run it one day, with the idea that my entire function would be to help people have fun at work. And really that great place to work department did wonderful things. It took the money that was used in Christmas parties, and we built a rec center. And so we broke up the day with volleyball, tennis, other things. We worked long hours, but it really didn't seem like it. And it was kind of like family. Those of us that work together, we still correspond and talk. And it was really a very great experience. And of course, after IBM acquired Rome, one of the first things they did is get rid of the Great Place to Work department, because they said it's everybody's job to make a great place to work. And if anybody's ever studied management theory, if something's everybody's job, it's nobody's job. Nobody focuses on it. It just doesn't happen. And so the underlying concept here I really like. Where I see the gaps, though, is, as I mentioned, is we need to be able to create a model of what somebody might be capable of becoming, and then inform them as to whether or not they would enjoy the result early on. My biggest beneficial experience, also from that same grandfather, was one summer he hired a tutor for me, and the tutor was to teach me about life. And so what we did is we toured mental hospitals, we toured prisons, we toured farms, and we saw the immigrant workers and how they lived, and made me realize I didn't want to go to prison. I didn't want to go to mental hospital. Most of the mental hospital patients that we visited were drug addicts. And so that kept me away from drugs. It kept me away from doing anything criminal for the most part, because I saw what the consequences were, even though I couldn't conceive of them at my age by myself. By seeing them, I learned what they were, and I learned I didn't really want to be at the bottom of the pile with regard to workers, because I didn't want to live like that either. I didn't necessarily need luxury, because I'd learned from my grandfather that being a CEO was great until you retired, in which case you lost all purpose in life. And you strive to get that status that you had lost in your prior job. And I didn't want to end up that way either. So even though I went through the IBM training program for CEOs, I had already decided that was not going to be a path for me. And I'd also decided if I couldn't have fun in my job, then I didn't want to do it. And so over time, over a long period of time, I crafted what it is I do now. And I enjoy it thoroughly, even though I'm close to retirement at this particular point. I've spent a good 20 years, nearly 30 years doing what it is I enjoy, but I never would have gotten here. I almost got here by accident, not by plan. And if I'd had a system that could help me understand what I enjoyed, what was it that just made it worth getting up in the morning, what was it that I loved, it would have helped me craft those interim periods where I had a lot of jobs that I didn't really enjoy, wasn't fulfilled. I made money, but really it was about surviving the week and into the weekend, and then partying hard and doing stupid stuff. And the end result is while I eventually got where I needed to go, I could have got there a ton earlier. In fact, I still remember when I left and went out on my own, the people asked me, well, what's it like? I said, well, the problem is now that I realized where I wanted to be, I kind of wonder why I didn't do this a decade ago. And the reason was I didn't know I could do it. So as we look at these systems and we're helping people to evolve, one is I think we need to do a critical skill gap analysis for kids. Here are the things you're going to need the base things. I'm not talking about programming. I'm not talking about engineering. I'm just talking about human skills to survive life. And a good chunk of that is how do you deal with the opposite sex? How do you create relationships? How do you maintain friendships? How do you, and today, how do you break through the amount of false information that surrounds us and get to the truth that you're going to need to know to make decisions that are going to be in your best interest? In other words, as we talk about critical thinking, and I don't think Fred brought this up, is you overusing the word critical, but it's so critical that we learn to critically challenge what it is we're told. Because a lot of what we're told is false. And if we build our future on these falsities, then our future is going to be just as flawed. And so those core skills, does the person critically challenge what is they're told, or do they just accept it? Do they know how to deal with the opposite sex appropriately? I don't want to go into how I was mistrained and how to deal with women, but let's just say my first 20 or 30 years, I look back and I'd like to slap myself silly. And so because I really didn't. My motivations were not where they should have been. And these are things that should have been taught. But as I was growing up, boys were taught, the more women you get with, the more status you have. And that was just so incredibly wrong. To this day, I really don't understand why that was. And my sister and I were taught completely differently. In fact, we often talk about this is women are told not to do what boys are told to do, and it creates these awful early on conflicts, and we wonder why relationships don't work. But in the end, if you can form a foundation, a healthy group of people that are around you, that support you, and that you support, so it's cooperative and collaborative and helpful, and then you can turn that into a small business opportunity, big business opportunity, whatever it is you like. But discovering what it is you like becomes just so very critical. Because if you don't know where you want to go, I think Yogi Berra said this, was going to saying this, if you don't know where you want to go, you're never going to get there. And so you need to have a goal. You need to have that goal needs to be flexible. It needs to be informed. And my final comment is the one thing that really worked for me, and I figured out because in a changing environment, there's an awful lot of risk, was not to specialize, to be kind of a jack of all trades, because then as things change, you can roll the punches and move to something else. I'm watching an awful lot of kids come out of school now with degrees in computer programming, and they can't find jobs because AIs are doing a lot of those jobs now, and these big AI companies are laying off their programmers because the AI is making their existing programmers so much more performant. They don't need the extra people. By the way, I think this is a huge mistake. I think we should just be increasing the overall output of the companies rather than cutting people. But that's just me. But in the end, being able to be flexible, understand the trends that are coming, and being able to roll with those trends. And if something goes badly, having that group of folks that you can rely on to carry you through tragedy and trauma is just so critical. But if you don't develop the skills to do that, then you don't get that support structure. So that's really where I would like to see a lot of our focus as educators go, is helping kids be more well-rounded and to have the core skills they need to survive an increasingly hostile world, and get the kind of future that I've enjoyed, where you get up every day and you're looking forward to work, as opposed to getting up every day and saying, "Oh my God, it's Monday. I've got 5 more days of this crap before I can have a good time." Every day you should have a good time, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan.
Oh boy, I mean, there's so much to unpack here. Thank you very much, Julian. I'll be frank. I'm in Silicon Valley. I'm a holistic person, arts, tech, and business, and urban planning. So I kind of take the holistic view, and I appreciate your focus on EQ. And here's why: Silicon Valley. I mean, I'll be frank. It sounded like a product pitch to me, and I hear them all the time. This is the summer of love. Everybody's AI this, AI that, and it's going to change the world because it's coming fast right now, and we don't really know what's going to happen yet. So I appreciate your focus on EQ, and here's why. Silicon Valley is all IQ, smart people with very low EQ. It's almost like Asperger's, and they really need, and the phones don't help, and social media doesn't help. So we need to have people with higher EQ. And Carnegie Mellon discovered 30 years ago that EQ accounts for 90% of our success. But we spent 90% of our time on IQ. So that's why we're really technically smart, but really socially and emotionally stunted. And it's getting worse. So that's where Kokoro, it's really a problem worldwide. So that's one of the things. Now, well, I tend to take a macro view, and here's what I would think. From planning view, we have to make a major shift in the world, and there's 5 different issues we have to deal with. The paradigm shift from the past, people training, that's what Kokoro's addressing, the EQ portion, place, very specific, where you live, in each region is different, the problems in each region, and then the plans. So you have to address all 5 issues. And in Japan, they start with EQ because they realize that if you have dysfunctional people, you cannot work as a team. And it takes a village. It takes a team to succeed in anything. One of the problems in education, which I've always found, is this me-centric or person-centric. And the problem is in the real world, because I've been in business and tech and all this, it's always a team. You never see a solo person doing anything, even startup companies. So unless you have really strong EQ skills of teamwork, collaboration, caring, compassion, you will fail. Or if you want to be a soloist, we call them lab rats in Silicon Valley. You put them away in a lab and they just work on tech. And you put them in front of a machine and AI, and they could do whatever they want. But in terms of affecting changes in the world, it's through people, not AI. The other problem with AI, it's garbage in, garbage out. And so the real business model goes like this. Your expertise times AI is the result. a data result, not the physical result. So if you put in garbage and you don't know what you don't know, then you get garbage out. And one of the problems is AI is replacing pure knowledge or memory processing. And so what's happening is wisdom, which is the humanities, is becoming more important now. So I would argue that we're going to see a revolution. We call it soft touch, not hard touch, or high tech touch. High tech, high. Well, way back in the day, it was called what's it called? Tech, high touch, high tech. So Silicon Valley is ultimate high tech with all the problems. Your technocratic state, unfeeling, almost draconian, and it could be Orwellian. That's what we're facing with AI, and total automated bots. So what we want to have is people who are caring, feeling, which is what it was all about. So we have people who control the machines and are not controlled by the machines. All right, and that's the key difference. Is that, and I'm in the medical space with the AI Medis. We always keep the human in the loop, because here's the problem: with all the intelligence AI has, they generate false positives and false negatives. In medicine, you can kill a patient. Therefore, and you're legally, financially responsible. So liability and personal financial responsibility will become a huge issue, because you're going to have all these people who are stupid to go in there and use AI thinking it's a solution, and they make oops, I made a mistake, I killed the patient. Well, that's what we call a career-ending move in Silicon Valley. It's a company-ending move, and we need to protect against that. That's why I think, Julian, if you could emphasize the importance of keeping the humans and teams in a loop, it's important. I'll give you an example. My wife was in hospice, and we had to make a final decision whether to pull the plug, and they don't like using the word, but the doctor said there's always a team, 3 of us, and vote whether to pull the plug or not, and it has to be unanimous. They always human in the loop. It's life or death decision. And many of these issues now at the planning level, we're dealing with billions of lives. We're not talking about millions. We're talking billions of lives. So one of the things I've learned in fact, in urban planning, because I've been in tech and planning where billions of dollars involved in planning, it's like trillions of dollars involved in infrastructure and things. Philosophy, asking the right questions, humanities. Is this the right thing to do? Is this the human thing to do? That's the most important question you can ask. Because if you don't do that, you end up with a draconian Orwellian state where it's basically profits and tech over people and crushed. And that's what we need to guard against, and that's why I think the Kokoro is going to be very important, to emphasize the humanity side of the fence, because that's the only way we can beat AI, frankly, is we have to be more human using AI, not less human. And I think, so I thank you a lot for really emphasizing, and what I like about your wisdom is not just Northern wisdom with great scholars from Germany, but rather India, China, people in this global South. And so all wisdom, indigenous peoples, is really what we need to understand. And most people, in fact, I don't know anything about most of this wisdom, especially indigenous wisdom. So I think if you could tap into that, it would be a huge revolution in thinking. Just asking this question from the global South and indigenous people, which right now we don't teach in universities. They really don't. But anyways, thank you so much for all that. And I think everybody's asking the right questions. It's just a matter of now saying, what do we do about it? How do we actually implement it? That's the challenge.
Thank you. Great discussions. Mr. Julian, many interesting points come, and especially when I go to different universities and NGO and government agencies, and I meet with them, I share the concept of kokoro. And I find people become very excited when they find that global South wisdom they can use through this kokoro. Global North wisdom we can use from Bangladesh, from India. What's your thoughts? I find that you have a brilliant idea, how you want to execute it.
Sharif, I'm sorry, what was the last part of it?
My last question is that you have a brilliant idea how you want to execute these things in, let's say, in South Asia and in China or in Japan. Or what's the way of doing things? Yeah.
Well, it always begins with what are the challenges. Bob and Daryl pointed out some really critical challenges that are particular to regions, but also of general and universal importance. The dissatisfaction with work, the concept that somehow work has to be punitive, that you put off your life for your weekend. I mean, it's a poignant situation around the world. But it does all begin, however, with specificity. What are the critical burning issues from a negotiation point of view? What are the areas of pain? And then adapt Kokomo to exactly pinpoint how precisely to address these issues in the most practical way. And I do agree with what Sheridan is saying. We have the tools now. This is not something that I and our small businesses we really want to form alliances, beginning with people, Sheridan already, and David, we're just getting to know David, our colleagues. But the key is to try to build cohorts who can practice these skills, refine them, add their own wisdom to it. This is not a static database. This is a very much living, evolving, emerging phenomenon. And so to find the right allies, to build the right case study, develop data, that is a critical challenge to show that this really works. We have conceptually all the components have been very well tested, but we're now bringing it into the world. The question is, can we really make wisdom and integral resilience viral? And there are a lot of people who are far deeper thinkers than I in the area of business of how to do that. But it really will allow the process to happen. If there's strong interest in Bangladesh, go with that. Go with the flow and let it emerge in the most creative and useful and compassionate way. But we're getting some interesting feedback. I'm not quite sure what it means.
If you're not speaking, please mute your microphone because there's something coming through and it's making it very hard to hear. And I think it's David Smith. There we go.
Not the kind of feedback you were looking for, Joe. Sharif,
Now
you're
I can't
muted.
hear anybody.
Julian, you want to add any point? I think now it's okay.
No. I think it's a wonderful panel. Sharif, it's to your great credit that you have put this panel together. I deeply appreciate that you have allowed me to have an opportunity to present these thoughts. And I think everybody has made really a very important set of insights that we will now have a recording. And the key is to start to explore these things. Ali Rice, I really hope that you can contribute to the Global Women's Feminine app. I'm very excited. That's our flagship. We feel that the yearning, and Patricia Botter Johnson, one of our great women colleagues, points out that in the development of AI, there's a very substantial bias toward men. Not just that many of the programmers have been men, but the data in the internet contains a huge male bias. And we're at a pivotal point, because if this continues, given how multiplying and proliferating AI is becoming ubiquitous throughout our society, this bias itself will multiply and become irreversible. And the bias, I mean, if we can recognize that there's a parallel between the way many women as you were, and you named a number of the qualities of the that women are strong among. I talk about into very developed powers of intuition. If these, we have an opportunity. These reflect, in a way, recent discoveries in brain science in terms of how the right hemisphere of the brain is in continual communication with itself with the attributes of the left brain, more associated with analytic logic, but not that the right brain doesn't have these capacities as well as the human heart. Where we really want to head, which is what Sheridan is saying, the real direction is to humanize AI and that bring AI closer to nature and reflect how nature and the human brain actually functions in a harmonious way. If we can accomplish that, that is in a way, that is pinpoints the source of a lot of the calamities and suffering today. There's an incredible imbalance. And if we can help through our collective efforts to restore some balance, compassion, and harmony, we will have accomplished something for future generations and their children. So anyway, that's the large mission, but I think we all have a place in contributing and creating this together, and the tools of AI can be a valuable assistant.
Thank you, Professor Fred. I have to go for this concluding remarks, but we have few questions. You can respond. Professor Fred.
Yes, we've talked a lot about children's upbringing, and our use of Kokoro in the Tondo Climate Leadership Certificate has been pitched at university seniors and university graduates. And all my career experience has been in adult education. I'm not good at teaching kids at all, but I think what we need is a whole core of the kinds of people who tutored Rob. That was an amazing story, Rob, and I would be great if there were more people, your childhood tutor. So I like Kokoro because we're not getting generic, uncheckable answers back from ChatGPT. As long as when Kokoro says that Socrates says this or Maslow says that Socrates really did say it or Maslow really did say it, then we've got a really good tool. And especially when they said something that seems to be at odds with each other. Okay, this engenders critical thinking amongst the user of the Kokoro system because they have to think, why does, even when the Kokoro AI integrates the answers and summarizes the answers of several famous philosophers, the user really does have to stop and reflect, why did this philosopher say something different and seemingly at odds with that one? So the access to human wisdom really does give a different flavor altogether than just, oh, I'm asking a machine for guidance here. When my daughter, I remember, was looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the things that make people happy and satisfied, she said, Maslow forgot consumer electronics because that's what makes her happy. But now we have it, right? We have the wisdom, the access to the life satisfaction on our laptops and on our phones. So what daughter Anna said was missing is now in our hands.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith, my next question for you, what role should artificial intelligence and automation play in a talent-driven economy, and what's your closing remarks?
Well, Dr. Shreve, great question. And it's one that we've touched upon on one of your prior broadcasts, but as you begin to look at it, some of the roles in it is really looking at how to use AI in a way to play a transformation and really a dual role in a way in a talent-driven economy by creating new advanced roles that demand higher skills and continuous learning. But the other side of that, it will be displacing certain jobs and certain jobs that where the AI tools are better suited than the human approach to it. And the forecast is that AI and automation are expected to displace around 85 million jobs over the next couple of years, but they will simultaneously create almost 98 million new roles. So it should be a net positive impact. The AI is going to help really mitigate and move the shift in skill demands because employers are going to really value skills that AI cannot easily replicate, including positions that require empathy, in complex problem solving, creativity, innovation, ethical judgment, many others like that. But you will see routine and repetitive tasks, including basic data analysis and standardized customer support. They're going to be really emphasized more on the AI side. The other thing, just a couple of other quick points, you're going to see continuous reskilling. You've heard me use many times the comment that we're in a time of lifelong learning. Well, the rapid rise of AI is going to make that even a steeper curve of lifelong learning. The forecast I've seen recently is the half-life of professional skills has been shrinking. I know when I was in college, the professional skills tenure was about 7 years. Then it shrunk to 5. Today we're in a half-life of professional skills of about 2 years. So much of what you learn as a freshman, sophomore in college is out of date by the time you graduate, as you look at that. And you'll see that. The other places that you're seeing huge impacts, to answer your question, is in entry-level jobs and mobility. AI is making entry-level jobs much, much more difficult and harder to do. And you'll see that going forward. You're going to see really new ethical concerns, new social consideration, corporate responsibility has to go up in this new area. And you're going to see technocrats have to change their view. You no longer can be just a normal regulatory involvement. You're going to have expertise in artificial intelligence, in labor, in economics, in ethics, to really become one who can be a person to manage, place laws and regulations in place in this new age. So thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Ali Rice. Yeah. Julian, you want to add anything?
Which is what we're doing to have self-upskilling. So, David, a company needed, as you say, slash its workforce, it just gives them the tools on the job to upskill. And that is part of what we call Kokoro for organizations. But I really appreciate your last comment.
And Julian, it's not just with that, it's also continuous learning while you're in your job using group intelligence, things like boot camps, other type of things like that are a very, very important part of that. Because in today's society, you have to reach outside of the skill-based training you find in a corporation. So it's really going and using that broader community of group intelligence to be successful. But again, Dr. Sharif, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ali Rice. My next question for you and the final comments from your side. Are traditional education system equipped to nurture talent for a technocratic age, or do we need a paradigm shift? Ali, can you unmute yourself?
We need a paradigm shift, and creativity is key to that. And I also think that because I'm involved with Genius U, I think we should encourage young people to recognize their natural gifts and talents, and they're there for a reason. So I think it's really important. And my final kind of contribution is one of my favorite quotes is from Deepak Chopra, and his is that uncertainty is the most fertile ground for creativity. And I've added it to imagination, innovation, and something else beginning with I that I can't think of because I'm on the spot. But anyway, so I think creativity is fundamental. And I think creativity is key to problem solving and just as a connection and just finding your way in the world. And I do actually think that part of the journey is that kind of mystery and unknown. So I don't think we can classify and, it's like have some kind of program that's going to make all the steps for us, because it's the winding steps that take us off base that usually kind of teach us more and lead us onto adventures that otherwise we wouldn't have. So for me, my fundamental thing that changed my whole outlook was working in the middle of the wilderness in California on a mountain. So and that was life-changing. So essentially, and culturally, just embracing other cultures and experiencing new lands gives you a new perspective on your own. So yeah, it's really important.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, in a technocracy, how do we ensure ethical leadership and avoid centralized control over knowledge? And what's your closing remarks for today?
Well, I've always believed if you want to have ethical leadership, the people that are leading are the people that shouldn't want to be leading. In other words, that you select them based on their capabilities, not because of their desire for status and control. When you put somebody in charge that simply their goal is to be in charge and have high status and to be able to order other people around, you've got issues because they're going to abuse their power. And we have a lot of examples of power abuse right now that are uncomfortably close to us here in the U.S. So it really, I think it starts with how we select our leaders, and our methodology is flawed, and we absolutely have to go back and look at that, because we are clearly, whether we're talking about leaders of companies, I mean, I could tell stories about CEOs that have done things that are just nuts and destroying their companies in the process and their own careers in the process, all avoidable mistakes, and largely because they were the wrong person with the job. I kind of go on 2 CEOs ago at Intel. I actually worked pretty hard to get Brian Krasanich out of the job, because Intel wouldn't be around if he'd stayed in there. It really comes back to we need to select our leaders, train up our leaders much better than we do. This can't be simply a hill you climb to gain control over others, and so you can break the rules that everybody else has to follow. That's not the reward you should have for leadership. And we have issues with regard to salary and compensation. There's such a disparity in compensation for leadership. It's actually creating morale problems in the organizations that they lead, and distraction problems for the CEOs that get this massive amount of money, which has to itself be managed. It is just completely broken. And so going back to education and getting people to move into leadership because they are the right kind of people. In other words, the kind of people that want to nurture others, help others, work collaboratively, not dictatorially, that have the kinds of interpersonal skills that we would appreciate in a leader, and also in and of themselves are critical thinkers, because we have way too many folks in power that take what they're given and just run with it. I did the postmortem on IBM's near collapse because I was just so frustrated with the company. And I met with a lot of the people that had reported to John Akers, who was the CEO that was fired at IBM. And what I found was John Akers was actually a very well-trained, comprehensive CEO. He was just surrounded by people that told him what he wanted to hear, and not people that told him what he needed to hear. And the end result was he was unaware that the company was collapsing around him until it actually collapsed and he got fired. That's problematic. And that problem exists in almost every single major company at the moment, that CEOs are blind to the things that are going on around them. And we could go down in the organization to directors and first line managers and see the same kinds of behaviors. This fear of bad information, this concept of shooting the messenger. So teaching that information is your friend and validating that information before you act on it is your best path forward is also very critical. I really love the concept of this, if we can call it a project or initiative. Because it makes a lot of steps in the right direction. I can see a lot more work that needs to be done, but that's always going to be the case. This could be a huge benefit if it was adopted broadly and it evolved along the lines that we've discussed to keep creating better people overall, and then creating some type of circular feedback loop so that it could be modified based on the outcome of the people that it is helping. So it is always growing, always advancing, and always more capable. And that's it for me today. I've got to run off to a car show shortly, and hopefully I won't get rained out.
Thank you. Mr. Sharidan, my last question for you. What global models of technocracy and talent economy have proven success model, maybe in Silicon Valley, and what lesson can we apply locally, like in Bangladesh? Can you unmute, please? Mr.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me? All right, good. Again, I'm a public policy wonk urban planner, so I think the holistic big view at the local, regional, and national level. And typically the most successful is a balance between public and private, all right, on a broad scale. One of the challenges we have right now is corporations have taken over in the top, in concentrated power, the aristocrats and the oligarchs, and it's all privately driven. So we have, I call it unleashed greed for small, short-term profit maximization and ownership and control. And that's why we have a lot of dysfunctions in the world. Now, we need to move back to a more balanced public-private partnership where the public, broadly put, and it's basically citizens around the world, need to have a greater voice. Now, it's a governance problem. It's a political problem. It's elections and free elections, ideally a democracy or some sort of representative democracy. Without that, all the AI in the world would accelerate the domination of corporations and the oligarchs, right? So AI is not a solution. It's just a tool in the big scheme of things. Now, I tend to think very systematically. I was a political science major, and our professor, we spent 1 year studying power. And we said, why do you want to do that? And he goes, well, you have to understand power is what controls the world and what happens. And you must understand. So we studied the abuse of power, all the examples around the world, local, Hitler and everybody. We studied, all. And so people is politics. Every relationship at the personal level, group level, corporate level, government is political because people are political. And then you have this personal politics versus the group politics. So that's a governance issue. At what level of scale are you looking at? So the challenge is for the world now is we're trying to move from one paradigm, the old paradigm, to a new paradigm. So how do we do it gracefully, engaging everybody in the process? That's the challenge. It's sort of like operating on yourself while you're trying to fly from one state to another. How do we do that? And I think we have the good models are this. It's not quite, well, the US is clearly a oligarchic model. We're now like Russia and China. And then you have Sweden, which is more quite socialist, which is more public. So some sort of balance between private markets and public but grassroots. One of the problems of Sweden is top down right now because the party's very, embedded in 100 years. So they've kind of lost touch with their people. And so ideally you want more of a grassroots bottom-up approach where you can, not all the dictates come from the top, whether it's Swedish, French, or Russian, whatever. So I would like to see more of a grassroots democracy enabled by the technology, using it, because nowadays you can organize billions of people at a local level. When I spoke in 2009 with Ericsson, they were doing the mobile life and they were talking about it. And I asked them, I said, sir, at the phone. What's the revolution? And he said, you're looking at the wrong side of the camera. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, see, when you look at the camera, at the phone, it's passive consumption. They're trying to sell you something. But the camera is the power. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, think about it. You're a producer, director, editor, creator with the camera, right? I said, yeah. So Ericsson at top management, that's 2009, says, we think the revolution is going to come from the camera. And we go, what do you mean by revolution? 9 months later, Arab Spring hit. And what happened? All the young people were using the cameras to broadcast to the whole world. And then he said, that's the revolution we were waiting for. It was a mass grassroots revolution because they all have the camera. So if you want to change the world today, we already have the tools. It's called a cell phone. And billions of people will have it. And in the future, everybody's going to have one. So the challenge now is, what do we do with these literally cameras that can set off revolutions and unseat dictators? So that's the power. And it's really, and so one of the things I think most people underestimate the power of the grassroots. They think that, oh, you can control them and educate them, and so you can't. When people are angry, like we saw, actually MAGA too is a good example, you cannot control those people. Okay, it's very emotional. Trump knows how to manipulate them. You cannot control these people. So the challenge is that how do you take this anger and channel it using the power of the phone with Kokoro to help so it's more caring and, and positive and not destructive. Now, traditionally in politics, we notice that you either enable grassroots power, democracy, or eventually the grassroots will destroy you. And whether it's the French Revolution or Arab Spring or whatever, or the fall of the Shah of Iran, and then the religions take over, and then you get a theocracy, which is dangerous too. So we're dealing with very, very, very powerful forces. People underestimate the power of emotion. They underestimate the power of caring about their families. Look at Gaza right now. The reason why I just look at it and I say, oh, if I were Arab, I'd be pissed off and angry because, but the same for the other side, for Jewish people, I look at that and says, there's no reaction. All these people are getting murdered. So on both sides, I feel sorry for people, but it angered me on both sides. And so the question then is, how do you harness all that anger in a positive way for constructive change? If you can figure that one out, you've contributed to the world. So we have the model. It's called the United Nations. After World War II, we totally destroyed ourselves. And we all sat down and said, you know what? We're going to have a human rights charter. We're going to try to play by the rules and help each other out. So if you want to look at a good model, look at the UN and the original idea, not the current one, the original one. And then also the Marshall Plan. We learned from World War I, don't humiliate Germany, help Germany out with the Marshall Plan in Japan. And if you do that, they will be your best friends, not your worst enemies. You will not create a Hitler. So right now, we need to figure out, how do we not create more Hitlers from all these angry people? Because they're just the religious leaders and the oligarchs are looking for angry people to take advantage and exploit and grab power, because we've seen that through history. So that's the big challenge. And we have the tools now. That's the funny part. Back in the day in World War II, you couldn't do that if leafleting doesn't help. But nowadays, you have billions of people with a camera, and they could totally influence the world just like Trump can. So then, how do you do it? That's the tricky part. And if we knew, we wouldn't have all our problems today.
Did we lose Sharif?
Yeah, that's kind of a problem because he needs to end this.
Yes.
Here he comes.
Here he's coming
He
back.
comes back.
Thank you, everyone. We have electricity problems, so thank you, everyone, for joining today's sessions. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.